Ladies and gentlemen.
I can't really heard what Jeremy says because I got my 2 Stanley Cup rings plugged in my ear.
Introduce.
This is a guy that's going to be traded, though.
You're an announcer with a long stick from time to time.
You think it's my fault? Is that what you're saying? This guy's such an idiot here.
The Puck Luck Fantasy Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Puck Luck Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Sudemans, and today I'll be breaking down the 2 games on DraftKings. Make sure you check out our website, puckluckfantasy.com. We have our skater and stack rankings on there, some goalie rankings, and lots of good tools that will help you out when you're building your lineups. It's all free right now, so why not take advantage of that while you can? And while you're there, throw your email in so we can give you any updates that we have, as well as you'll be eligible for a discount on a subscription next season. Make sure you also follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Let's jump into the first game of the night, which will be between the Lightning and the Bruins. We're expecting Vasilevsky will be getting the start against Tuukka Rask. Now, with the goalies in general for tonight, there's a moderate amount of separation between the most valuable and the least valuable. It's in the ballpark of about 16-17%, so that's fairly moderate, but it for tournaments, you really can play everyone. But for cash, I'm really going to be targeting just a couple of these goalies, and neither of them are from this game. Vasilevsky is definitely the top tournament option because he is expected to see a lot of shots against. So like we saw in the first game, and sort of like we predicted there, especially if Boston gets behind, they're going to be shooting the puck a ton in order to try and catch up. So Vasilevsky is expected to see a ton of shots, and because of that, he gets a very high value. Now, he's still not really expected to get the win, and so that's why it's a little bit more risky, and that's why I sort of say he's more of a tournament play rather than a cash play. Now, Tuukka Rask is definitely still playable for tournaments. He's in the second tier of goalie. You could also make the argument that he is cash game worthy. Personally, I do like Fleury a little bit more, even at the higher price tag. We still have him a little bit more valuable. So personally, I'm going to go Fleury, but Tuukka Rask is for sure playable for cash even, and definitely for tournaments as well, especially if he matches up with the rest of your line. So that being said, let's take a look at the stacks and player rankings for this game. There's definitely a lot that we can play from this game, and this is where I will be focusing the most heavily tonight. Now, with the Bruins, we're not entirely sure of what their lineup will round out being because they have announced that Donato will be in the lineup, but they haven't announced who will be out. So really, the only line that I'm confident that it will stay together is the top line from the Bruins with Pastrnak, Marchand, and Bergeron. Now, Marchand has been a game time decision, but we're still expecting he will play. It's likely he will. It's just been said that he has just a minor injury that he's dealing with. So we're expecting he will be playing, and so the top line is going to be the one that I'm going to be going to mostly. If you are able to pay attention to the lineups right before the game, you should definitely be attacking either the second or the third line because those pop up really high amongst our value here. And that makes sense because those will most likely be the lines that see the Tampa Bay depth. So make sure if you can pay attention and you can get in before the game, be targeting the second and third line. But if you can't do that, stay with the top line for sure because they should be intact and they are very valuable for tonight. Like usual, Torrey Krug pairs really well with the top line. We also really like Zdeno Chara. He's more of a one-off play today, but definitely for cash or also just to finish out your lineup. He's still only 4K. He's seeing a ton of ice time. He has a very high floor. So definitely a great cash play and definitely even tournaments if he can finish your lineup there to give you that differentiation. The other defense are not really, the other one that you could play is McAvoy. He is seeing a bit of power play time. He's also seeing a lot of even strength ice time. I still like Chara a bit more than McAvoy personally, but For cash, I would prefer Chara, but for McAvoy, for tournaments, maybe that would be a better option, as he has more of a higher ceiling, as he's more likely to get the goals since he has that power play time. Even at even strength, he's more of an offensive defenseman compared to Chara. So that's basically how that would break down from that side. We also like Victor Hedman, like usual. He's only 5.4K, which is really cheap. Now, unfortunately, we are not going to be very heavily on the top line of the Lightning. They're right at the bubble, so I might just have a couple of them, but we're expecting them to see heavy matchup against the top line of the Bruins. So once again, they're getting pretty significantly dropped in value, and we see that in the overall value rankings. And so I'm really going to be fading them tonight, which is always scary, but hopefully they won't have a big night. And it's not even too bad really of a situation, because with the big lines, they're always going to get the bigger ownership. So I'm not always too upset when I have to fade a big line, because even if they do go off and you have them, you still have to compete with a ton of other players. So I like to sort of target sort of maybe the lesser owned lines a little bit. I won't sacrifice value for that, but I do try to look to differentiate when you can and when it makes sense. All right, and that should pretty much wrap up the plays from this game. There is one more that you can play. So I didn't really talk about the Lightning. So the Lightning play of the day would be their second line. So they're on the road, and what that means is they're not going to be on the shutdown duty anymore. And like we saw in the last game, because of that, so the matchups for this game are pretty interesting, because what I think is going on is that since the Tampa Bay Lightning know that Boston one's going to be going up against their top line, what they're doing is they're really only playing their top line for the power play. And what they're doing is they're making their second line get a ton of even strength ice time. And so what that means is they're getting a big boost for tonight. And so I built that in today because I was sort of manually checking over the projected ice times. And so that really boosted that line up. And it makes sense because they're really in a good spot. They're getting a lot of ice time, and they still even get a decent amount of power play time. They have great correlation among them as well, and they have been on fire. So the only bad thing is that the ownership might be starting to climb since they have been on fire, but I still really like them as a line tonight. All right, and with that, we can move into the second game of the day, which will be between the San Jose Sharks and the Golden Knights. We're expecting that we will see Martin Jones in net against Marc-Andre Fleury. And like I mentioned earlier, Fleury is my favorite cash goalie of the night. So he is the second most valuable goalie, but definitely the best play for cash. He's expensive, but really he's the best goal. He's the goalie that's really in the best spot to get the win and see the most amount of shots for the goalies that are going to also get the win. So he's the safest play, in my opinion. I really don't like Martin Jones tonight. He's definitely 7.5K is too expensive when he's on the road and not a great chance of seeing the win. So I'm really going to be avoiding him. I may get a couple of him in tournaments, but he really is the lowest ranked goalie of the night. So I will probably be staying away from him as much as I can. So moving on to the stacks, like I mentioned, we're mostly going to be focusing on the other games. So there's not a whole lot that I do like from this game, although we're also a little bit worried about what the lines will end up being. They didn't have any practice yesterday, and so we're going to have to pay attention once again to what the lines will actually be. So if you can, pay attention 15 minutes before the start of the game. Follow on Twitter there so that you can find any lineup changes. But that being said, I do like the second line the most from the San Jose Sharks, which is Thomas Hertl, Logan Couture, and Mikhail Bodker. Now, they could get switched up, so make sure you keep an eye on this, but I think that is what they will be ending up tonight as. I also really like the third line, although they're really inexpensive, so they're a little bit harder to fit in, but they might work if you're going with the Boston's top line, and you need sort of because they're the really only other super cheap pick that's in that range. So they're the other play, although they're more of a bubble play as well. And then the other play that we have from this game is going to be the Las Vegas top line. So really, I'm going to be fading some of these lines. I'm going to be fading the Sharks top line. They're more of a bubble play still, but they're going to be the one that I'm going to have to really hope doesn't go off tonight. Even though I like Evander Kane individually, it's just Joe Pavelski is a little bit too expensive. And they're just they just don't make it tonight. There's a couple other lines I'll be targeting ahead of them. They're on the road and they're against Vegas, which is pretty good at shutting down other teams' top lines. So for those reasons, they really get bumped down the value list, and that's why I'll be sort of avoiding them overall. If you do happen to go, you can still play Brent Burns, so more as a one-off because I'm not really on their top line, but he also pairs with Couture. So if you did go to the second line, you could pair Brent Burns. That's really the only play from the Sharks from this game. There's a couple defensemen that you can definitely play from Las Vegas, though. My favorite being Colin Miller. So he is back slotted in as well, right now anyways, for the second power play unit. He's only 3.9K, so that instantly boosts his value quite a bit, and so he's going to be my favorite defenseman of the night, actually. He just edges out Zdeno Chara. So make sure you're getting Colin Miller into your lineups tonight, definitely for cash, and even as your sort of, if you can do it as your one-off defenseman, he works really well in that position. The other defenseman you could play would be Nate Schmidt. He's also on their second power play right now, and then Shea Theodore is playable as well. He's not my favorite today, but he's definitely still in that range. Okay, so that will do for the games. I'm going to move now into the Puck Luck picks of the day. So this is where I give you picks from sort of 4 different tiers for players. I'm going to give you a super expensive pick. So to start it off, we're going to go with Patrice Bergeron. So he's 7.4K, which is it's still cheap for him. It's not the cheapest he's been, but there's not a lot of players in that upper tier tonight that I really like. So Patrice Bergeron will be the one to go to. In terms of a sort of medium to expensive player, I'm going to go with Evander Kane. He's still only 5.6K, which is still really cheap for him, even on the road. I really like Rick Nash at 4.8K in sort of that medium to cheap tier. And then as a really cheap pick, I like Colin Miller today at 3.9K. In terms of a full stack for today, I'm going to go with the Bergeron, Pastrnak, and Marchand line. And then my favorite mini stack of the day is going to be Torrey Krug and Rick Nash. Okay, so that will wrap things up for today. Make sure you check out our website. Once again, that's puckluckfantasy.com. We have lots of tools that will help you out when you're building your lineups, some player and stack rankings, goalie rankings. Make sure you check that out. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you for watching. We will see you tomorrow.